of Ukraine. We'll talk about cooperation between State Border Guard Service of Ukraine with Border Guard Service of EU in issues of strengthening the border of Ukraine.
The colonel and the assistant to the head of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. We will speak on the subject how EU can help Ukraine in fostering and strengthening of our borders. Прошу, вітаємо Сергія Астахова.
Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Інформаційний привід для нашої сьогоднішньої зустрічі, він занадто актуальний для нашої країни, тому що останні роки ми дуже плідно співпрацюємо з Європейським Союзом в плані залучення міжнародної технічної допомоги для посилення українського кордону. Але, на жаль, учора українські ЗМІ поширили вислів голови представництва Європейського Союзу в Україні пана Яна Томбінського стосовно нібито неефективності витрачання допомоги Європейського Союзу для облаштування державного кордону України. Нам так здається, те, що ми бачили в інформаційних повідомленнях, що, скоріше за всього, відбувся некоректний переклад його слів, або дехто з журналістів українських просто неправильно зрозумів шановного пана посла.
We have received maybe the comment was not properly translated, or journalists have misused Mr. Tombinsky's statement about international assistance of European Union to Ukraine in strengthening the border. We are very respectful of Mr. Tombinsky and to European Union and to many international state institutions and charitable institutions of the world. And in order to strengthen the rapport between the European Union and State Service of Ukraine, we would like to notify you that Ukrainian State Border Guard Service is being transformed from the military service to the police service following European model. And this transformation has happened with assistance of international experts, including European experts, and completion of international help projects coming from European Union, from UOBAM, helping Moldova, helping Ukraine in cooperation of Frontex Border Guard Association with headquarters in Warsaw. And the purpose is to create professional law enforcement agency of police type following European standards. In framework of technical assistance program, there are many projects of partnerships over the last 10 years. This assistance was given through TASIS projects. European Union help to CIS countries, and this continued until 2006. And also TAIEX programs, 10 million euros that Mr. Ambassador mentioned were realized through 2004 through 2013 from European side to border guards units. Just equipment that was transferred was estimated at more than 30 million euro. Quadricycles, machines, mobile heat vision monitoring units, radio stations, 36 equipment of passport controls, 648 sets. Absolute majority of this equipment came in 2004 through 2009. The equipment transferred to border guard units had police application and non-lethal method of operation to prevent and stop infringements, but not to fight back the military invasion. It was proportionally distributed throughout the border with possibility of maneuvering depending on direct threats at specific border units. Several examples of cooperation through 2010-2013 with assistance and help of European Commission at amount of 8.5 million euros. We have created 8 points of detention of people who cross the border illegally, and of them 8 at European border and 2 at Russian Federation. We also work at Ukrainian-Polish border, and the budget of the project is 8.8 million euros with Ukrainian co-financing. Please take this in account. The selection of contractors and subcontracting, audit and monitoring is done following European procedures, taking in participation European partners, and there were no complaints. And now Ukraine lives through very difficult times, and sometimes we hear accusations about wrong use or misuse of this international help aimed at development of law enforcement agency, state border guard service. This is a discussion issue that requires certain analysis and discussion. If there is time and social demand, will later return to this issue specifically when we have order at state border. But again, I'd like to underline that purchasing equipment of this limited spectrum of action is defined by position of our European partners to develop border guard service not as a military force but as police force. And these limitations are set by European Commission for such kind of projects. It would be important to remind that all the questions related to buildings, technical specification for equipment, the tenders, selection of winners, following the fulfillment of contract conditions by the winners, buying equipment, installing equipment, guarantee and post-guarantee service. All this was monitored by European experts, following European procedures with general consultations and explanations by state border guard service. I'd like to underline we have not wasted 1 euro cent and we have not misused it. The money was not even directed at the border guard service, but at specific contractors. All the equipment supply was audited and monitored by European monitoring institutions and by State Financial Inspection and Counting Chamber of Ukraine. The only time the funds were directed specifically to the border guard service are 2 tranches by the program of spectral budget support in December of 2013 and April 2014. These funds are at the state treasury accounts, and they await completion of procedures to deliver them to state service. So it's too early to define their proper use. Beginning 2004, ambassadors of EU to Ukraine, Bog Teixeira and Jan Tombinsky, have always greeted the level of cooperation with state border guard service to ensure the safety of the border, and they have assessed it as a high level of cooperation between Europe and Ukrainian government institutions, and they have called a state bodyguard service as a very well respected and a predictable partner. About 2 months ago, we had a meeting with the leadership of EU, and we never heard anyone complain about efficiency of use of European help, and these questions were not even raised. Talking about perspectives of cooperation, Ukraine has received 2 tranches for the needs of border guard management, and State Border Guard Service expects to receive 21 million euros. According to conditions, this help can be used to expedite border guard procedure process, scanners, processing equipment, etc., as well as to increase the operational ability of mobile groups through patrol cars and helicopters, as well as supplying heat vision equipment and small drones. But this is for perspective. Now we are talking about allocation of 7.6 million euros. Following the principle of emergency help to buy patrol cars, patrol vans, and heat vision equipment. With much respect to our European partners, we decided to give the wide public, including international community, all the information about European assistance to Ukraine. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Sergey. Your questions, colleagues.
Bogdana Kostюк, Liberty Radio. Just a request. Tell us more about the eastern border. The Defense and Security Council agreed that the Russian-Ukrainian section of the border is to be strengthened. So what, from the professional point of view, does the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine consider this section to be right? And also, what do you think about this idea of Igor Kolomoisky about building the wall on the border between Ukraine and Russia? I believe it's too early to discuss the issue of how to control the border. First, we need to get it back under the control of Ukrainian authorities. In fact, there's a big problem, and we have been warning about that the border had to be organized. About 2 months ago, the defense of the border was to be organized together with the State Border Guard Service and the National Guard. Now this is happening, uniting the efforts of 3 law enforcement bodies. We are trying to return the control over the state border of Ukraine. We still have this outstanding problem, but actually every day the law enforcement bodies, step by step, are taking the state border under their control. As to the initiative of Mr. Kolomoisky, this is very interesting. It has good perspectives. At present, it is very difficult to do that, especially at the sections which where every day there are shootings. The shootings from the mortar launchers and so on. That's the real front line. We need to be realistic, and we need to see what's happening. We need to return the this borderline under the control of Ukraine. And I believe that the amount of money that was mentioned will be enlarged dozen times, because that's otherwise it's unrealistic. I believe that at the section of the border between Israel and Palestine, they have been building such wall for 10 years. They have not finished it, and they spent huge amounts of money. Is Ukraine ready at this stage to find such money to provide such funding is a big question. Now we need to get the control over this borderline back, and then we will be improving the system of defense. Maybe you have some current information about what's happening at the border now. You were talking about different equipment there. Maybe the border requires some different type of equipment. Of course, if we have the warfare going on, we need absolutely different equipment and armaments. And maybe we had the course towards the European integration, and that were requirements of the Ukrainian government to turn the border service into the border that it is now. Also, there were some European projects on providing assistance to our agency as a law enforcement agency, not military agency. Now, to change what was discussed during the negotiations, there were meetings of the Commission held, there was monitoring. And for many years there was a lot done, but now it is basically not realistic to change it so that it becomes military structure. This work started in the middle of the 90s when the service was turned into the law enforcement agency. I could not hear the question. This night at the border were more or less quiet. Of course, there are permanent attacks on the border guards, but there was no breakthrough the state border, and we believe that is positive. As to accumulation of these bands, criminal bands, or some unknown military groups on the territory of Russian Federation close to Ukrainian border. Yes, we do have this information. We monitor the situation together with the National Guards and the armed forces. We are ready to stop that, but we are getting ready. We are improving the system of the border guard service protection. Where we cannot control, we improve the system of protection and defense. Any other questions? Another question from Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, because today politicians of different countries are openly talking about these things. For example, in the morning, there were representatives of Lithuania. They say that in Ukraine, this is not just the military conflict, but it's the military invasion into Ukraine. Even Europe confirms that. Can we expect to get some assistance from European Union? The assistance not just to strengthen the border, but to repel this large-scale military invasion from Russia. We do hope that this will happen at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, at the level of our State Border Guard Service. There were some very fruitful meetings. They will continue at the highest level. We do hope that this international assistance will be adjusted and it will be directed more for defense. What was implemented before was directed towards law enforcement body, but to immediately change this system of supply is difficult. Certain procurements have been done already, some agreements have been signed, but to stop that and to say we do not need that, but we need some other things, that means the whole procedure. And we immediately need, well, if not armored vehicles, but some patrol vehicles which are protected by at least some armor. We lack bulletproof vests. We need some other means of individual and collective protection. And some of these things are manufactured, produced in Ukraine, but other things are to be procured from abroad, or we need to ask for assistance from other countries. Another question. In the morning, there was a lot of information about implementation of the peaceful plan of the president, but the main element of this plan is closing the border, because there's a risk that the other side will make use of the situation. As an expert, I would like to ask you, is it realistic to close the border? The notion close the border is too wide. First, we need to get to the border, to strengthen ourselves there, to renew the operations of our cross-border points, those who surrendered, those who were not identified as terrorists, as criminals, as bandits, and if such people want to go to Russian Federation because of different reasons, they have to leave the territory of Ukraine. And then we need to restore Ukrainian authorities, power on the rest of the territory. Any other questions? The last question. What is the situation? There was information that aviation, that it was allowed to use aviation. How do you cooperate with the aviation? Do you get any assistance? It's not the question to us, but you are fixing, you are getting the information. Okay, I understand your information as how do law enforcement bodies cooperate with aviation. During the last 2 weeks, there were some local efficient operations conducted on narrowing this gap in the front line in the east, and aviation and military helicopters were used there, and they demonstrated their efficiency. Thank you. We hope to see you, more of you here. Thank you. Thank you. At 1:30 we will have the next speaker.